Hi, Will. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, all good.
Oh.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll just wait another minute or so just to let other people join us as well. Okay, without further ado, we'll make a start. So first of all, welcome everyone to the One Sales Cows Yarmouth Cows race running this Saturday and Sunday. Thanks very much to our sponsors, One Sales. They'll invite all competitors to an informal gathering and drinks at the Royal Solent Yacht Club at 5:30 on Saturday, which we're all looking forward to. As usual, just talk briefly about Predict Wind. JOG members get a discount on Predict Wind, which is 20% off any of their subscriptions available through the JOG members benefit page. Right, making a start, looking at the weather. I think the synoptic level forecast is perhaps a lot more uncertain than maybe the inshore forecasts are suggesting, which are generally saying north or northeasterly winds on the Saturday, maybe more predominantly northeasterly winds on the Sunday. If we look at the synoptic scale, and this is the 50-kilometre UKMO model resolution, you can see over to the southwest, we've got this high pressure system here, which is bringing us what looks like northwesterly winds here at midnight on Saturday. And to the north of us, there's quite a significant low pressure system here with its associated fronts, which just some of them are sort of straddling England and Denmark there. However, if you zoom out to the 100-kilometre UKMO model, you can see the low pressure and the high pressure compressing this westerly band of wind here. And it wouldn't take a huge movement in the pressure systems for us to be seeing much more dominantly westerly winds, in my opinion. So it's just something to bear in mind when we talk about these northerly and northeasterly winds. There's a potential it could be very different on Saturday morning and Sunday. If we now look at the wind maps for Saturday and Sunday, just zoom in a bit more. So this is just gone midnight on Saturday. If we run it forward, you can see that wind filling in from the north. So that's 6:45 in the morning, it's northerly. And then throughout the day, it builds and veers to the northeasterly. And we'll just run it forward to Sunday. On Sunday, well, Saturday evening, the wind's building quite a bit there, seeing winds up to 15 knots in the Solent, running forward to the Sunday, maybe going a bit quieter overnight, and possibly, oh, apologies, I've overran. On the Sunday, seeing more northerly winds looking at this model anyway. In terms of gusts, potentially quite gusty, as you can see indicated here. So it's saying 25 knots on the Sunday around midday. Peak gusts, possibly 30 knots there, which sounds unusual when we're expecting such nice weather, but hey ho, we'll just have to live with it. Good news is I don't think we're likely to get any rain, particularly except possibly in the morning from the frontal system. Hopefully that won't be there during the day. Temperature wise, it's looking really hot, potentially up to 29 degrees, which will be very nice for a jog race. I don't remember a jog race as warm as that. So looking back at the wind, I would say current models are saying Saturday, the base wind is northeast or north 8 to 12 knots in the morning, 10 to 18 in the afternoon. But if you look at those gusts up to 30 knots, it really could be anything. On the Sunday, northeast or north or east, depending which model you look at. Although when we looked at wind maps there, it looked more dominant from the north, 10 to 17 knots. But again, with these gusts, it's really hard to say. With the possibility of having effectively no cloud cover and the heat, there's a good chance of sea breeze developing, particularly in the afternoon. which are likely to be significant. However, for what we're doing here in this weather brief, it's quite difficult to sort of pin anything down from that. What we'll do now is just have a look at the course. Usual start line, first starts at 10 o'clock, last start 10:45. As usual, please go through the identity gate. Obviously leave the Isle of Wight to starboard as you're heading out. As we're going down the Solent, you've got Osborne Bay to your south, Ryde Middlebank to the north, and the deep water is basically on the rum line. Through the forts to Bembridge Ledge, and then up to Horse Elbow, and then a relatively long leg through the northern edge of the Solent up to Hamble Yacht Services there. Over the bank, as you can see, the rum line takes you directly over the shallowest part of Hamble Bank, worth bearing in mind. And then you follow the rum line to Zwerver, if I pronounce that correctly, and then to the finish line of Yarmouth. Distance is 35 miles or so. What I'd like to do now is hand over to Will for the individual leg briefs. What we'll do, due to this being an inshore race and weather routing is not really suitable for using this, we won't do weather routing like we've done normally, but we'll talk about how the weather might impact each leg instead. So over to you, Will. You're right, Will.
Yeah, I've tried a new setup with a second screen so I can actually see my notes this time, and I'm causing myself technical difficulties. You'd thought by now I'd be good at this. So we'll start race out. So I've planned, I'll start talking about sea breeze, about if there is a potential for sea breeze. I agree. Probably somewhere on about leg 3 as we're heading back towards the forts. Maybe the long leg from the forts up to Hamble Yacht Services would be when it would kick in. It's interesting to look at the models because most of the models agree that there's not going to be much cloud cover, but I can't remember one of them, and I can't remember which one had much more cloud cover on Saturday morning than every other model. So it could be quite interesting whether we get a sea breeze or not. But for the first leg, tide turned at the start for all classes. I think what you'd actually want to do is start the pin on port if you could get away with it, and they were doing, say, a pursuit race where we're all starting on our own. Obviously, I think that's highly unlikely to work, starting with the flip, especially in the 2 classes with 16, I believe. So with that in mind, it would be a start somewhere in the middle of the line on starboard with the option to tack early, because I think most of the leg with the tide, I think, will be on port. So I think it's mostly a one-tap beat with little bits of starboard just to keep away from the Isle of Wight. If the wind is slightly more northerly than forecast, it'll be a straight line fetch on the next leg. So that's through it, just trying to avoid on the way through, trying to avoid the Ryde Middle Bank. So avoiding the Ryde Middle Bank on the way through and getting to the forts. And then it's the leg to Bembridge. With the southeasterly, I think this is likely to be a one-tack fetch. Unless it's very light, and to be honest, if it's very light, we won't be out there because they'll have shortened the course. It's not likely to be anything other than a jib leg, in my opinion. I think you're very unlikely to get a code 0 or jib top or anything like that up unless we're at the bottom end of all the forecasts. Leg back up, I think, should be pretty much a reverse of the leg there. Again, probably a 50-60 through wind angle fetch, made a little bit deeper by the tide running east. One thing with the tide you don't want to do on this leg is get over the rum line, because if you get over the rum line, you're bearing away to get to the mark at the end. It's going to be really painful. And with the way the tide runs, if the wind is far enough north to make this an actual beat, you want to go inshore first. I think it's unlikely to be that far north based on the forecasts, but as we're talking about, it's a little bit, there's a bit of uncertainty in there. About 12:30 it turns inshore between Bembridge and No Man's Land. Then we're on the long leg, and I think this is the one, as I said at the front, up front, is that it's if we're going to see a sea breeze, it's going to start seeing it on this leg. If we don't get a sea breeze, it's going to be about 120-ish true wind angle. So that'll be kite or something reachy. If the sea breeze is starting to kick in, there is a chance in the eastern zone you could always get the southeasterly sea breeze, which turns this into a proper run. You could also get, remember, there's quite often a big hole off cows when the sea breeze first fills in. But I think generally this is probably going to be a 120 straight line leg. If the wind clocks far enough southeast, especially with it maybe funneling a little bit in the Solent, it'll become a pure and becomes a run with jibes in it. You want to head in towards Portsmouth and stay on the mainland shore to get out the tide. But I think that's unlikely. I think you're much more likely to be straight lining this. So for leg 5, the convenient thing with the gradient wind and the sea breeze is that it's either a pure beat or a pure run, which kind of makes the tactics the same. So my view on this one, and I think there's options either way. I would pick north of the Brambles and then head in towards the mainland shore. There is a tidal option to get in behind the Brambles and tuck south of the Brambles, especially if it's a beat. You can go around the stick, tack onto port, sail across the bottom of the Brambles. The one caveat I will say on that is if you go on that bit south of the Brambles, if you go 100 meters too far, you end up in an awful lot of tide. So my choice, and it's going to be an interesting decision, and it also comes down to timings, but my choice would be to go north of the Brambles and in towards the bay and then towards Leap. When you get to Leap, it should have turned by about 2:15 to get around Leap Spit. Now, based on timings and what we're looking at, I think certainly for all the slower boats, I'm not sure about the faster boats, but certainly for the slower boats, I would say it will have turned by the time they get to Leap Spit. Otherwise, it's the classic out, go as far inshore of the Cardinal as you dare, bearing in mind it's a big, lumpy, rocky spit, then back in towards Bewley. And then it's the standard sort of tactics along the last bit of the leg. Stay out the tide until it starts to turn, and then sort of keep an eye on SOG versus boat speed, and sort of work your way further out as the tide turns until you get to Zwerver. Yeah, I'm not sure how that one's pronounced either, Will. From there, it should be pretty much a nice straight line across the Solent to the finish.
Brilliant. Just a quick comment from Martin. Could all competitors, when arriving at Yarmouth, not all charge in together and just form an orderly queue, just so that the harbour staff aren't overwhelmed with trying to get us all berth, especially if, for whatever reason, we have sort of a mass finish, which may or may not happen. We'll just talk about the, so just to recap, One Sails invite us all to drinks at 5:30 at Royal Solent Yacht Club. What we'll do is we'll just have a quick look at the Sunday racecourse as well.
Yeah, we are, as always, we are happy to take questions, queries. So if anyone's got any questions or queries and they want to raise them, please do.
Excellent. So first thing with the course on Sunday is there is an amendment to the sailing instructions, which has amended the course. So please make sure you read the amendment so you go the right way. I'll just run through an overview of it very briefly. So start line, it's best to read the sailing instructions for the description of both the start line at Yarmouth and the finish line at Yarmouth, just because they're quite wordy and it's quite difficult to tell from the chart exactly where they are. It's better to see it in real life, but make sure you read the sailing instructions. So start line, West Leap, down to Saltmead, and then up to Greening's Payments, and then East Knoll, just north of Bramble Bank, North Ryde Middle, north of Ryde Middle Bank, and then finish line. Back to you, Will.
Okay, so I think, sort of, as Will alluded to, there's a possibility of some fronts coming through Sunday morning. Hopefully, hopefully before we've gone racing. But what that should do, based on what I looked at, is leave quite a thick cloud cover. So I think there's very unlikely to be a sea breeze on Sunday, just because of that cloud cover. Plus, the northerly, as mentioned, is quite a bit stronger. So I think between the two factors, I think it's highly unlikely there's going to be a sea breeze on Sunday. But watch me be proved wrong. It's hot enough and warm enough that I could be wrong. For the first leg, it's a pure beat. You again thinking pin end to try and stay out to try and get into the tide. But I think the critical thing in terms of setting up for the start is to have a decent clean air lane, so you can put a decent starboard leg out. I wouldn't be too worried about bang on the pin. Be better to be a bit in clean air, and you could give yourself the options to keep going or tack in. But pure beat, tacking on is the tide across the Western Solent or across the main channel is generally gives you a reasonably large window to hit shifts and things. So be looking at shifts. I'm expecting this to be pretty much almost a pure beat to the point of Martin laying the windward mark levels of bias in it. The second leg is probably 100-degree true wind angle beam reach. However, with the tide running east quite strongly, it's going to be at least 10 degrees deeper in reality than it looks on the chart to account for the tide. So in which case I can see some boats putting something up. I think it's going to be very marginal. It's either going to be a race winning or a race losing move. But
I mean, just to add that the leg's only a mile long, so depending on your boat handling ability will dictate whether you decide to stick something up or not.
Yeah, and then again, good point. And then the wind strength. If you get a 30 knot gust when you've got a code 0 up at 100 wind angle, it's not going to end well. Yeah. Then we're back to the pure beat, staying again as far. Going up on the shifts, stay as far off the mainland shore as possible, just to stay in the stronger tide, and then come in for the mark. And that beat pretty much continues up all the way to East Knoll. So try and stay and then maybe try and stay in sort of Southampton water, the channel up to Southampton water as you go up that leg. Probably got the most tide, and then again come into tack onto port to come in towards East Knoll. Leg 5, so leg from 4 to 5 on the chart, is pretty much, it's only 5 degrees different to leg 2. So whatever you did, you'll be able to learn from whatever you did in leg 2, and work out what worked and what didn't work for the boats around you and what you did in that leg 2, and then go from there and sort of copy the tactics with that. This one's quite a bit longer. It's 2 miles. Should be pretty fast. Then, and having looked at the tide, just so my expectation for the whole race is for all in an easterly tide. I think for even the slower boats, given the wind forecast and the tide under us and the start times, I think everyone's going to have an easterly the whole day. So from there, going round North Ride Middle onto a pure run, try and stay on the right bank for as long as possible, then cut across between the right bank and the point off Cowes, and then it's a classic kite finish along off Cowes, but going the wrong way compared to the classic Cowes Week along the green finishes. And then try and stay out the tide, going in and out of Cowes. I would recommend before you get to Sunday, so Snowdon is not in the marks, but there are written in the jog notice of race and general instructions, etc. There are various things you have to stay outside of off Cowes. So if you're planning to be aggressive coming past Cowes, it'd be worth a read up tomorrow of all of those obstructions. I'm planning to have a look. So just to make sure you stay offshore of everything you need to. So that's it. Are there any questions?
Yeah, so comment from Martin. He's just asked, with limited space when approaching the start on Sunday, please observe the sailing instructions and raise your mainsail on the west side of the pier so that race officers have the best opportunity to spot you. One more thing to add is we'd encourage everybody to submit any interesting moments, so pictures or stories, to Martin. These really help promote JOG, both on behalf of JOG and, you know, the sponsors love seeing our content because it makes it worthwhile sponsoring the races if it generates lots of content for them. And it's, you know, it's really the sponsors who allow us to do lots of this racing. So please send any interesting moments you might have to Martin by email. Any questions, please feel free to ask in the Q&A. Will and I are going to stick around for a few minutes to answer them. But otherwise, please feel free to go and enjoy your Thursday evening, and we'll see you all Saturday afternoon at the Royal Sailing Yacht Club. Do you have a good Jubilee weekend, Will?
I did lots of DIY, including the shelves you can't quite see that are just up there. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to going sailing again. It's actually been a couple of weeks for me now. So looking forward to getting back out there. I hope, based on I do hope that it's not there isn't any rain on Sunday. Don't want it to be. I always find it miserable wearing foulies when it's 25 degrees because you just
don't wear them. Just get wet. It's easier.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm helming this weekend, so I'll just get cold because I'll just sit there at the back getting cold.
Yeah. We saw 50 knots coming back from Deauville in the middle of the channel. But Rich was chatting to one of the laser 28s, and they didn't see that much. So I'm wondering if our instruments were overreading, or we did actually just get a really localized like front go through. But it was we dropped the main in the middle of the channel and just sailed back up the jib. It was we couldn't keep the bow down. We're broaching on like a reach.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, that's the other question. Where are your 50 knots coming from?
Yeah, beam on. We just get. At one point, I was like, "Oh, we could drop the main, or we can just keep steering west, like deep downwind." But we're heading towards like Falmouth. I was like, "I'm not spending Sunday." Yeah. I was like, "I'm not spending Sunday. I'm being back from the west." Anyway, it appears we have no questions, so I'll see you Saturday.
Yeah, see you Saturday. Have a good one.
Cheers, Will.
Cheers.
Bye.